Question. Hi Kim, thanks for your content and work. Neuroscientists can see the lack of animation of the area responsible for empathy in scans of the brains of psychopaths or sociopaths. Some of them will statistically become fallen beings in embodiment. Could you please explain if it implies that we all incarnate with a physical body that reflects our level of consciousness? These people can't feel empathy the way we do. Then do they really have a choice out of duality? Thank you. Okay, now, a couple of things here. I think the first thing that's interesting here is that could you please explain if it implies that we all incarnate with a physical body that reflects our level of consciousness? And there can be some validity to this, as I have explained in many of my videos. We have 4 lower bodies. There's the physical body, there's the emotional, the mental, the identity level. And when the physical body dies, the contents of the emotional, mental, and identity level don't disappear. We carry them with us to a future embodiment. So that means that when we come into our next lifetime, we still have these patterns that we created in many previous lifetimes in the identity, mental, emotional bodies. And they will have an impact not only on the kind of physical body, but on the entire physical situation we embody into. The family situation, the society, many things. It also has an impact on the body. For example, physical diseases can be part of this. We are attracted to a certain body because of certain patterns in our subconscious mind. So yes, there's definitely validity to that. But we have to be really careful how we apply this, because it must not become an excuse. See, the person is saying, sociopaths and psychopaths, the area responsible for empathy in the brain isn't activated in them. So these people can't feel empathy the way we do. Then do they really have a choice? And that is where I would strongly say, yes, they absolutely have a choice. See, it's like one of these arguments, you know, circular arguments. If a person is attracted to a certain body type that can't feel empathy in the brain because of their past lives, you can't say that now that the person has embodied in this body, it no longer has a choice because the brain can't feel empathy. I mean, it's you know, how could the person then ever get out of this? And the whole idea of a spiritual path is we can overcome whatever conditions because we chose to put ourselves in that state of mind. We created these contents of our identity, mental, and emotional bodies. And therefore we can also choose to overcome it. So, I mean, the real problem with neuroscience is that neuroscientists are trapped in scientific materialism. And they want to explain every aspect of human behavior by the brain. And so they have identified, I mean, they spent the last 40 years doing ever more sophisticated brain scans. And some people still believe that one day they will find a way to show how every aspect of human psychology starts with a particular activity in the brain. But there are now a growing number of scientists who are saying this will never happen. Okay, I can mention 3. An Italian scientist, Federico Fascin. He's written a book called Irreducible. There's Donald Hoffman, American scientist, also written a couple of books. And then there's Bernardo Castro, Dutch scientist. And there are others, but these are the three main ones I can think of right now. And they are starting to say that, well, Donald Hoffman, for example, is saying, for 40 years we have been researching the brain, trying to find a correspondence between the experience of the color red and a particular brain activity. But we haven't found it after 40 years. And not only haven't we found it, we don't even have a theory of how an activity in the brain produces the vision of the color red. We don't even have a theory. And that's why he's beginning to say we need to step back from materialism, ask different kind of questions, whether consciousness perhaps comes before the brain. And obviously as a spiritual person, if you believe in reincarnation, right? That's why I'm saying that the argument is a little bit circular, because if you believe in reincarnation, you believe there is a part of you that is beyond the brain. That's what reincarnates in different bodies. And yeah, you may, as a result of your past choices, come into a body that doesn't have as active of an empathy brain center as most people do, but this doesn't mean that you have no choice, that you can't transcend that state. I would also say that, once you start realizing that perhaps all aspects of human consciousness cannot be explained by the brain, you have to ask yourself which came first, the chicken or the egg. In other words, is the fact that sociopaths don't show brain activity in the center that has empathy, is that because there's something wrong with their brains? Or is it because the consciousness of that person doesn't activate the brain center? In other words, is the brain center, like I'm waving my hands, is that just something that happens in my brain? Or is it because my personality, my being, is that kind of expresses itself by waving its hands? So in other words, there's obviously a brain center that directs my hands to wave. But is it the brain center that's the cause, or is it my psychology that activates the brain center that waves my hands? So in other words, a sociopath, is it that his brain center isn't working, so therefore he can't feel empathy? Or is it that in his being, in his soul, or whatever you want to call it, his three higher bodies, he doesn't feel empathy, and therefore he doesn't activate the brain center that expresses empathy? And see, in my view, the physical brain, is what allows us to act in this world, to express. So the physical brain, yes, it allows us to express empathy. And when we have empathy in our emotional, mental, and identity bodies, that will activate the brain center that allows us to express empathy. But it isn't the brain center that's causing it. Right? It's just like waving my hands. It's not my brain that causes this. It's my being that is this way.